Hey guys, welcome to my review of how my 2022 AFL Supercoach season went. Hope you enjoy. (2022), the year that taught me a lot of new things. At the start of the season, we had a lot of new changes. As you know, the trade boosts, the DPP changes, and the extra trades really helped. It made kind of what you would consider the more experienced Supercoach players being back to being novices again. You saw a lot of the content creators, a lot of the streamers, those people that comment on Twitter and Facebook, kind of fall down the ranks a little bit. Whereas maybe the more prepared people, the guys that took risks and analysed the season, they did really well. Happy to say I was kind of one of those people, and you'll see how my team went throughout the year. I wish I could have produced a lot more content throughout the year. Work and school and life and just maybe even just laziness kind of set us back a little bit there. But I'm here now. I want to show you how the team went and what trades and what kind of lessons I learned throughout the year that would help to give you guys some knowledge heading into next year. The things I've learned and the things that I wish I hadn't done as well. So without further ado, let's check out the team. So, boy oh boy, we finished this year with a final rank of 547. Wow. That's probably the highest rank I've ever had. It's not the highest rank that I've had throughout the year, but definitely finishing with. This year, picking up players at the right time definitely helped me quite a lot. And as we go through the trades, you'll see a bit of that. Some players I brought in, some players I brought out and then brought back in again. We kept a few premiums for way too long on the bench and triple traded for a couple of players who really didn't work out that way. Dropping off Nick Dacos, for example, and then have him score, 4 or 5 scores over 100 in a row, really hurt. And similar with Mcrae, offloading him at bargain basement price, only to score 300s, or 3-ish hundreds in a row. Really wasn't the best. This year, I learned a lot of things about myself, especially being patient with players. I know a lot of people got rid of premiums maybe when they scored like an 80. And it's like, oh, I paid 800k or 700k for this player. Why is he not scoring me 150s? Get rid of him. Something must be wrong. Having that little bit of patience there to not impulse trade as much or make the wrong impulse trades really helped out. That's something that I've learned from this year. And also picking up players at the right time. Let's check out the finished team. Yep. So, this is my finished team for the year. In the backline, we have Jack Sinclair. Boy, oh boy, I'm really glad I picked him up when I did. Got him just kind of around the price starting to rise. And man, this year has definitely been the rise of the halfback flankers, especially the ones that do midfield roles, but also the ones that take the kickouts. So that's your Bailey Dale, your Jack Sinclair, obviously Sicily, and even Doherty as well. These guys were the new hotness, especially in the backline, and they were scoring big points. Jordan Dawson was one that I wish I had, and I'll speak about him a little bit later, but we didn't have him. He would be another example of this type of player. So in our backline, we had Sinclair, Sicily, Doherty, Stewart, who I ended up bringing in after his suspension for the last couple of rounds. Didn't perform as well as I thought he would. Probably a bit of a red flag there. If I could get someone else, I probably would have, but, you know, you go for the mystique. I think he has an average of like 150 at GMHBA, and that's where they were playing the last few weeks. So take the gamble that way. Bailey Dale, similar to last year, has kind of exploded in the second half of the year. Caleb Daniel was out for quite a while with injury and suspension, and that really helped Dale to cement his spot. Obviously, as you can see by his score of 83, there's a few dud scores in there as well. So when Daniel came back, when other players came in to try and fill in the position, he got moved around a lot and didn't score as well. Also, halfback flankers started to get tagged. Your Ryan Clark and a few other players. Finn McGuinness as another example. Where did taggers come from? Can we just not have taggers anymore? But what can you do? Man, oh man, big boy Jack Crisp. He's never again on my list. I'll speak about him later, but never again. never again. Make some TikToks, mate. Get your money off that. Don't be my Supercoach team anymore. And then we had Weir and Blank on the bench. So we picked up Blank mid-season, as you'll see from the history run through. Did really well. Kind of that 100k bench cover. Obviously, he's not going to be there for value, but a 40 is better than a donut. So what can you do? So our midfield. Ever faithful captain Rory Laird did really well. I think I traded him in for Jack Steele when Jack Steele started to have a poor form, and then got injured. He was out for something like 9 weeks. So yeah, Rory Laird was perfect at that value. Probably should have started him or brought him in earlier and not have to waste a Steele trade to him. But what can you do? A lot of people didn't have him when we got him, and we're just reaping the rewards. One of the reasons why I shot up the ladder a little bit. And we'll see that when we go over the team history as well. Clayton Oliver. Boy, oh boy. I don't think I'll be starting him next year. I think there might be better value options to start. And that's something I'll talk about a little bit later in what I've really learned. But fantastic player, and I'm glad I've got him in my team. Tapered off a little bit in the second half of the season, or at least like the last 5 or 6 games when a certain Christian Petrarca started going massive. And Melbourne was feeling the heat a little bit. Gawn wasn't as great. Melbourne was losing a couple of games, that kind of thing. But if he's averaging you 127, it's pretty good, right? Touk Miller, ever faithful, the guy that I started at the start of the year and have finished with in my team. There's not many of them, but he was definitely one of those people. I don't think next year I'm going to be starting him, purely for the fact that Gold Coast is in this weird position, and I want guys who are consistent 120s scorers, or that top echelon. And I think Touk Miller, maybe he's going to win the Brownlow this year. We'll wait and see. But I think maybe he's on that yes, no, instead of yes. So, Bontempelli, picked him up after the buys, has done phenomenal. Couple of bad scores in and there, but I'm really glad I own him. One of those nice pod type players that some other people just don't have. Lockie Neal, ever faithful. Pick him up at 540k at the start of the season. Not much else you can really say about him. Cripps. So Cripps has been someone who's been very interesting. Has had a lot of really stinker scores. I've kept him the entire year. I think I picked him up at round 2 or 3 just before the price rise to start with. Held him through all the stinker scores. And then as Carlton decided that, hey, we actually want to try and make finals this year. We want to try and win. Cripps started doing well. That was the addition of Pitnet as well. But I think just overall the dynamic changed a little bit in the team and Cripps started to pick up. Guys like Walsh, guys like Chera a little bit. A couple of others started to get tagged or they'd get the attention. And Cripps was kind of let free to do a little bit more. So you'll take the 60s and 70s, alongside the 120s. It's not the best, but whatever. Zach Merritt. Boy, oh boy. You'll look at the trade history and I'll show you when I picked him up. But when I did, oh man. I've never been a huge Zach Merritt fan. I'm not a person who will pick 1 or 2 premium midfielders in a team that only has 1 or 2 really good premium midfielders. So Essendon, for example, Zach Merritt and Parrish are the ones that are going to be taking all the punishment. Similar to a Carlton, where Cripps and Walsh are the ones going to be doing that as well. One will get targeted and the other one will score big, or vice versa, that kind of thing. I'd rather pick a player like a Lockie Neal or a Bontempelli, who, and lesser extent Oliver and Petrarca as well, who come from midfields that have a lot of people that can take the pressure, which kind of leads to you not having bombing out scores of Zach Merritt scored a 60 because the team got tagged and no one could take the pressure off him. It happened a couple of times during the season, but as you can see by his final score of 150, there were a lot of really good scores. Parrish was out for a while, and I didn't realise how good Zach Merritt was at just accumulating and distributing the ball really well as well. Had a lot of score assists I found from actually watching the games. Kick it to the guy in the forward 50 off a nice midfield ball or a clearance, and you're set. That's heaps of points. Jack Mcrae. There's a lot you can say about Jack Mcrae, and I probably won't say much, but I don't think I'll start him next year. I think there might be better value picks. If he stays at 530, but I don't think he will. If he stayed at 530, sure, I'll pick him. But he's likely to be around that 600k mark, and I think there might be better options there for you. Yeah, just what happens. So, Owens. Good old Machito Owens. We had him round 1. Then he came in the middle of the season, and he played the last couple of games at the end of the season. So, really glad we had him. Was basically our captaincy loophole for the entire year. And, you can't complain about that. Sometimes these players, they come in and out of your side. We didn't trade him out like other people did, but then we didn't have to bring him in back either. So, kind of saved us that way. St Kilda had a lot of Sunday-ish games, so late Saturdays and Sundays, and he was perfect for that. So, really, really happy. Judson Clark. So, I think the guy saved us for a couple of the bye rounds, did okay, and then really fell off as Noah Cumberland's and a couple of others from Richmond definitely started to do really well. So that's why he hasn't really played much in the last few games. Kind of fell off. I think he kicked 3 goals in 1 game. And then the next week he just didn't play. So Dimmer's got something to work out there. Richmond's just been kicked out of the finals. So sucks to be them. Maybe he should have played Judson Clark. Will Hayes. So Will Hayes, mid-season draft pick for us. We picked up him and blank during the mid-season. I'll show you in the trade history. But I was expecting him to play a little bit more. I think there were a couple of games where I had him in my team as donut coverage, and it really worked out for us. So you can't complain about that. It's never nice to have a donut, or never nice to not have rookies not playing on the field or playing on your bench. But as long as you have someone's better than no one. So in the rucks. If you had told me, Big J, by the end of the season, you're going to have Wits and English as your main rucks. You started with Gawn and Grundy. Stuff happened, Wits and English. What are you going to say, right? How do you know? It really worked out funny for us throughout the year. We didn't really pick up Wits at the cheapest price. At least a lot of people had him at like 380, 420, that kind of thing before he really started to explode in scoring. But by the end of it, I think basically everyone had Wits. English was the same. I picked him up around 12, as you'll see in the history. But he's a weird player. Bevo's got this thing where he seems to play players out of position or seems to give good players too much assistance. It's fine in the game, but in Supercoach, it really stinks. They started playing 2 rucks. They started playing 2 rucks and a tall. And then English was kind of pushed to the sidelines. There were a couple of games where he had like 30s or 40s in the first quarter, and then ended up on a 60. It's like, what are you doing, mate? Next year, I don't think I'll start him. It really depends on what happens with the Dogs ruck situation. But if he has DPP again, we're going to be tempted. There's going to be some options there that are really going to help. And Teakle as well. So just mid-season draft, I think he was. Just bench cover, really. Josh Dunkley, another one of the players who I had the whole season, and up and down, but finished on a 108 in the forward line. It's not too bad. Luke Parker. So as you'll see in the trade history, I think we grabbed him around round 6, and kind of been serviceable for us there. I wish I had another player who I'll talk about in a different episode, but Parker was kind of that difference maker in the first 10 or so rounds where people hadn't jumped onto the fact that he was still playing mid but forward selectable. A lot of people would have finished with Parker. He did fall off a little bit in the second half of the season, and you'll see that a lot of scores in the 90s, a couple of 80s, that kind of thing. Rarely ever went over the 100 mark. Your Chad Warners came in and started taking a lot of the ball. Mills came back to form and was taking a lot of the ball, and your big Heaney as well was taking a lot of that ball as well. So Parker kind of fell off a little bit, but we'll definitely take him for what he's given us. Cornelio. I think he was I don't know how to explain it, my regretful trade of the year. So we had Cornelio for a long time. I'll show you in the trade history. Bombed out a couple of weeks and then just did really poor. The week after we traded him, I think he played North and West Coast and went on a massive tear. And we ended up bringing him back in after the buys, which really saved us. I think it was round 13, we ended up bringing in 2 or 3 players that were playing that week that had already played, and it stopped us getting a couple of donuts, which really, really helped. Captain, I think he's still captain of GWS, had a couple of good games, had a couple of bad games, but is one of those highly owned players that a lot of people have, similar to a Cripps. So a 60 or a 70 from him doesn't hurt as much as like a Goldstein, for example, because not many people have him and a lot of people have those players. So everyone rides the 50 and instead of you just having it by yourself. Himmelberg. Fantastic pickup when we grabbed him. I'll show you in the history again when we actually got him in, but we got him around that 420k mark, just when he kind of started to go into the back line from Big Leon Cameron. Takes marks, was taking kickouts, takes intercepts, really good ball distributor as well. And I've always preached about not picking forwards in the forward line. As you can see, what we've got: Dunkley, midfielder; Parker, midfielder; Cornelio, midfielder; Himmelberg, basically playing back. He did play some forward, he'd get moved around a little bit, but majority in the back line. Will Brodie, midfielder; and Todd Goldstein at ruckman. So forwards in the forward line generally aren't the go because they don't score very well, and that's why you just don't pick them. Sometimes your Hawkins and your Tom Lynch will score, 8 goals and they'll be fantastic. The next week they'll get the number 1 defender ambition. So what can you do? Will Brodie, man, really glad we picked him up at around 220k. I think we got him in just before the price rise heading into round 3, and he's been a staple in our sides the entire time. A lot of people didn't get him then, and then were forced to bring him in at a much, much higher rate, especially because there were weeks when I think he was jumping up like 100k or 70 to 100k. And man, it just works out. So, Todd Goldstein. Probably one of my more regretful pickups throughout the year. I think we got him at a fairly good price, so I'm happy with that. But, and the bench cover and the ruck cover really, really helped as well. Especially with English going down, I think I brought in Goldstein to cover English while he was away. But CCJ coming in, a couple other players coming in. Goldstein definitely fell off in the last few rounds. He'd get something like a 40 or a 50, similar to English in the first quarter, or this, by half time, and then score a 75. And that's really not what you want from your F6. If I had picked up like a Heaney, for example, I'd be sitting on 100s most weeks for that second half of the season at a cheaper price and have a better player who I'm not worried about getting bashed on field every week. Ben Hobbs. Probably the best pickup rookie that I've had the entire year. The DPP has been utterly fantastic. His scoring has been decent, at least for most weeks, scoring between like a 60 and an 80. I think there were a couple of times when he even scored like a 90 and I covered him on field, which was amazing because a lot of people didn't have him. And for 155k when we picked him up, it looked rough for a while there. I think there was even a decrease in price. But when he started on a roll, started to play more midfield and actually get time on field, he was fantastic. And we're really glad we picked him up. Would have been nice if I had a couple of extra trades to actually swap him out for a Primo bench cover, Petrarca or a Heaney or someone like that, but just wasn't to be. And big Paul Curtis. So Paul Curtis missed the last couple of weeks due to injury and suspension, I believe, but Paul Curtis, Roos fan, can't complain. He actually scored pretty well. His disposal efficiency is really good. If he doesn't kick goals in the forward line, he's actually setting people up, which means I think he's got a really bright future under Clarko. He loves those type of players, the guys that do a lot more on field than just kind of what their job role is, and he's fantastic at that. Let's check out our history for the year. We'll see where we went up and down in the ranks, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. We started off the season really rough with a round ranking of 17,000. It was not great. It was dreadful. But that's what's happened sometimes. You miss out on picking a couple of players or, even just a captaincy score could be the difference between you and the top 1K to start with and you being, 17th, 20th, 40,000th. So it's not the end of the world, and we definitely showed that this year. Round 2 started to stabilize a little bit, picking up a bit more points, came back into top 3K, top 4K. So, it worked out quite well for us that way. Round 3, something similar. We had our first run of the real stinky scores. I'm not sure exactly what kind of happened at that point, but we did have a run of about 4 or 5 weeks where we just kept dropping and dropping and dropping in scores. As you'll see, the next week, way under par with another round position of 57,000. What did we get? So we were in top 20k at that point. Things were looking really down. Top 20k. It was not great. The next week, 24k as well. So we were just, maybe I think par was something like 2,300, 2,350, and we dropped another 4,000 spots. It was not great, but hold your ground, bring in those DPP midfielders that start doing quite well, make a couple of sneaky trades and sneaky changes. And as you can see, from round 8 onwards, we were basically home stretch. I don't think we really dropped a bad score since then, or dropped in ranking since then. A lot, last couple of weeks, not counting. So from round 9, 10 onwards, we just started going down in rank, or going up in rank. Down is up. The bye rounds hit us. The one thing I kind of loved about the bye rounds this year was the fact that I didn't actually have any donuts. I think it's the one year ever where I navigated the bye rounds, not perfectly, because you definitely had a lot of rookies on field, but making sure that I had 18 or 19 playing. The 19 and 20s in the last 2 of the bye rounds were fantastic, because people were picking up a Teakle scoring 2 or scoring 15, or Maurice Rioli scoring a 12, and I was getting a 50 or 60 as my lowest score. You don't have to have full premium, you just have to have best 18, but it really, really helps to have that 1 or 2 guys who were there. As you'll show from the trade history, I'll show that a little bit later. Make sure that you avoid donuts as much as you can during the bye rounds, but especially just during the season as well. This year, I didn't have any, and it really, really, really helped. Really meant the difference between me scoring the way I did and then not scoring the way I did. So we navigated the 3 bye rounds, came out of the bye rounds, doing really well. Almost top 1,000, which is fantastic. Last year, when we had the bye rounds, I think I dropped something like 8,000 spots. This year, top 1k. So it's pretty good. The week after that, we had another top score. It wasn't the best score, but almost 2,600 is really good. And then we cracked the top 1k. This is round 17. This is when it starts to get really juicy. Up until this point, we only had 1 trade left. So round 16, I can't remember who we brought in, but then round 17, we only had 1 trade left. So bench cover kind of saved us along the way from there. It wasn't fantastic. It might have just been a rookie on field instead of, not having a player. But a 60 or a 70 from a rookie can really make the difference. At least helping us hold the position as well. So round 17, 885. Round 18, 602. Round 19, our highest ranking for the year at 390. Worked out really well. Round 20, 470. And then round 21, 486. So we were holding our top 500 spot here. Round 22, we had a stinker. I missed out on a couple of the league finals there. Just scored something like 200 under par. I remember I think I had a decent captaincy score, but all my premiums were just not doing well. Goldstein stunk, English stunk. I think Zach Merritt got tagged, a few others as well. And it's like, if you scrape over an above average 100 score from all your players, you're doing well. But otherwise, it's just painful, man. What can you do? And then round 23, did really well. So managed to jump up just over 100 spots and then finish on 547. So really, really, really happy with that. Let's check out how the trades went. Started off round 2. So the first couple of rounds for the season is all about correcting your trades and correcting the players you really started with. So we saw that a lot with round 2 and round 3, bringing in a couple of the guys who were going to have really quick price jumps, which we saw from Bowie. Remember, he scored like a 160 or some monster score round 2. and was set to jump up at least 100k. So spending a trade on that wasn't great, but it meant that we could do another premium score. Dropping players like your Durden, who were the worst of the rookies that I need to get rid of, especially to get a Brody in. Durden for Brody, for a guy that you're going to keep for the whole year, worked out quite well. Whitfield as well, got rid of him before a lot of people held him for 5 or 6 weeks and tanked their scores. It's not great. So round 5 was our next time that we spent a lot of trades. So brought in O'Driscoll. I think he had just had his first price rise and had an 18 and 90 in his scoring. So was looking to jump up a lot in price there. And you can see, so Bowie from round 3 to round 5, spending a trade for 100k really didn't work out. One of the things that I will be looking to do next year is if I've got a premium spot. So this was let's say our D5 was our Bowie position. That was covered by, I think, Hall or Crisp. No, let's say it's D6. So Bowie's in our D6 position. We started off with 6 premium defenders. Whitfield to Bowie is our D6 cover. Next year when I do it, I think I'm just going to go Whitfield to another premium. We fluffed around so much with this D6 position, bringing in a Bowie, bringing in a rookie, bringing in another rookie on field, blah, 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 blah. It just meant that it cost us something like 4 or 5 trades to fill a single position on field. And ultimately, if you look at our goals are to get a full premium team. Spending 4 or 5 trades on one position on field is dreadful. Outside of what it actually gives you price wises and things like that, my life would have been so much easier if I had gone Whitfield to a Dawson, Whitfield to a Sinclair, Whitfield to Hewitt, who I already started with, but those kind of players to start with. One trade here would have saved me 5 or 6 trades further down here, and it would have really, really set us up a little bit more for the season. That's something I'll try and implement a little bit more next year. Look at the overall picture of actually finishing a spot on field versus going for that quick cash grab. Round 6, so that's when Hall, I think, got injured after bringing him in round 2. Filled his spot with Sicily, which worked out really well. Got rid of Stevens, didn't do very well, and then brought in Mr. Hobbs, who basically helped us out for the rest of the year, which was fantastic. We brought in Bruce as a cash cow there as well. Did all right. I think we got rid of him a bit later. Netted us 200k, so it's pretty good. We had him as bench cover instead of having him on field, which really, really helped. I think we were still running Gawn and Grundy at that point, and having that third player really meant that later on, as you'll see in round 7, I could actually get rid of Grundy and not worry about having to have someone covering on field that was a rookie. A lot of people had a Hayes or somebody on field, or a Bailey Williams, I think, was another player there. A couple of other West Coast players who, they play for 1 or 2 weeks, and it's like, oh, well, now you've got a donut in your rucks and you've got 20k to spend on a player. So good luck with that. Really helped. So bringing in those kind of players, 200k is a lot for a bench cover player, but it really, really helped out. And it gave us that flexibility, which was really great. Round 7. This was kind of when we actually really started to make the team changes and kind of shape a little bit what our midfield was starting to look like. I think next year I'm going to try and pick out a position on field. I'll definitely do midfield, but try and fill out that spot a bit earlier. Your defender rookies generally score quite well, or your defender mid-prices definitely score a bit better than your midfield rookies and midfield premiums there, or midfield mid-prices more so. So filling out that position on field with premiums really, really helps. It's the difference between you scoring something like a 150 potentially and, a 60, 70, 80, 90. So grab those guys when you can. Round 7 probably isn't the best time to get some of these players, but say an Oliver had already dropped something like 50k by that time. So, he really didn't drop much cheaper than that. So that was a good pickup for us. Steele was the one that really hurt. Could have picked up a Laird or someone else at that point, but I think Steele, if we can click on Steele, what did he score round? So round 7 when we got him, just before round 7, he'd come off a couple of really, really, really good scores. So 151, 128, 116. Picked him up round 7 for a 109. So, yeah, picked him up for a 107. And then, okay, decent score, whatever. Then he started to really tank in price. Oy, oy, oy. Then he started to really tank. Went off from injury, came back in round 17, did okay, but wasn't great for us there. So, what can you do? We got him in at round 7, and then 2 bad scores, we got rid of him, and then he started to score well again. So, really, really hurt us. It allowed us to get Rory Laird in, which you'll see here. 2 rounds later, we got Rory Laird in, but, what can you do? Round 7 was the start of getting rid of our bad ruckman. So, I don't think I got rid of Gawn earlier. No. So, round 7 was when we got rid of Grundy. Cherry, I think, had just got injured. So, time to get rid of, offload him as well. Decent cash rise, so 150k-ish off him, which is fine. And then Hayes, similar as well. So, poor fellow did his ACL again, and then was out for the rest of the season. So, brought in the Port Hayes, did all right, as you can see later on. We actually offloaded him for a decent cash grab, so it worked out quite well. Round 8, also starting off the DPP guys that we brought in, which was really good. Horn Francis, bit disappointing. Great player, but I think in a struggling North Melbourne side, having that midfielder having to do a lot, I think he scored a couple of hundreds, but then, you'd have a couple of stinker scores as well, just because there wasn't the ball. The start of the season this year was terrible for North, so they were just getting slaughtered. We held on to Rochelle a couple of weeks longer than everyone else did. A lot of people got rid of him at 220k or 180k. So he'd make a price rise and then drop and then, get rid of him. We held him for a little bit longer. And to get him at 273, offloading then was really good. Hugh Dixon, similar to that. A lot of people got rid of him about 200k. And we made another, 40k off. As I said before at the start, holding players for a couple of weeks longer has helped us quite a lot. It could have been done better, as you'll see from Mr. Dacos over here. But, what can you do? We brought in Luke Parker at a cheapish price. Some people got him in at sub 500k, which was fantastic. We got him at 515. It's not too bad. Curtis, similar as well. I think he debuted 2 weeks earlier in round 6. Was on the bubble, did really well. And then Mcrae as well. Round 9. Coming up. So round 9. O'Driscoll, that's when we offloaded O'Driscoll. Remember, we had brought him in at 165, I think. The DPP was really nice with him as well, I found. Being able to swap him and out with Dacos helped a lot. And helped to fill a position on field while still having that, Dacos, what you consider to be premium score. Helped quite a lot. So, O'Driscoll was out. And round 9 was probably the hardest round looking back in my season. I did a bit of calculations and the guys on Discord laughed at me a bit. But if I had gone Crisp, so if I had gone Dawson over Crisp at this point, I would have netted more money because Dawson was about 515k. And it would have actually got me an extra 400-ish points in the overall season. I think Crisp at this point had actually started to, what was it? So I got him in round 9. So yeah, I dropped him off for the 85 or 1 twip. So 85, I got rid of him. Had some killer scores and you beat yourself up. It's like, man, I wish I hadn't got rid of this player. He's done really well. I really wish I had kept him. Round 9, bring him in. Okay, 107's not too bad. 97, 100, okay, 119, yeah, pretty good. And then the bomb started to hit after the buys. 80, 79, 77, 91. Dreadful scores. Dreadful scores. For a guy that you paid basically premium price for. It really hurt. Really, really hurt. People were offloading him and I just didn't have the trades for it. And at that point, what are you going to get for a 400k player? You just can't. So it really hurt. Probably my worst trade of the season. We got rid of Ward after holding him in McDonald for probably 2 weeks later than we should have. And we brought in Clark and Hamilton. So just guys that were hopefully going to make some money. Round 10 was a big week for us as well. Still got injured at 590k after dropping 270s, which wasn't great. And we picked up Laird and Sinclair. So a couple of guys. So Laird was on a tear. Looked to be the best pickup for Steele, which obviously he was. And basically been our captain from then on. Cornelio at 429k. So wasn't the best time to get rid of him. We look at his scoring. So round 9 we got rid of him. So after holding Cornelio through a 70 and a 37, I just felt like it wasn't, not good enough. So I got rid of him then. Dropped a 140 against Gold Coast, 85 against Brisbane, whatever. The 174 really hurt against North Melbourne. So I think I brought him in at 113. And then we kept him for the rest of the year. So definitely one that I probably should have held on to. But sometimes you just don't know. And you don't want to be that guy that ends up having to hold a player through the buys or through like a really bad form slump. And it's like, oh, well, now I can't offload him because he's 300k again. So you're just stuck. His age and demographic and position on the field kind of was 50-50 for that regard. But, it wasn't great. The next week, we got rid of Martin. Yep, we got rid of Nick Martin that week. We should have got rid of someone else instead of Nick Martin. Maybe a Rowell, because Rowell ended up being was more expensive, and we held him through like a 37, which was crap. Round 11 got rid of Martin and Bruce after making us a bunch of money. That's when we brought in Witts. So we've held Witts since then, and then Jacob Weir as well. So this is kind of just before the mid-season draft, where you'll see here we brought in a lot of players from then. But, those people, they're really good. Round 12. Round 12 was the hard week. So got rid of Rowell, tick, did really well. Brought in Hayes, tick, not too bad. Didn't play much, but could have played. Would have liked to grab a Massimo or a Jai Cully instead, but I had some intel from some people that Hayes, being a mature age recruit from Carlton, like 26, they needed wingers, they needed players to run through that midfield, and he was hopefully going to play that position after getting 30-odd touches in the BFL every week. We traded off Dacos, which wasn't great. I'll show you why. So, what was this round? Dacos round 12. So let's check out Dacos round 12. So, Nick Dacos. Great. Okay, round 1. Pretty crap. West Coast did well. Okay. 200k player. Can't complain. 80. Yeah, why not? And then we got rid of him round 12. So before this game here, we got rid of him at probably his lowest price point. From then onwards, 113, 112, 93, 143 against Gold Coast, which was crazy. 99, 163. Huge scores. I think he ended up finishing at like 555k. So people who held him from round 12 onwards, that's a lot of money, bro. That's 180k that I wish I could have had. And the scoring too. Like, Crisp instead of Dacos. Finished off the season not great. So he had his 143. Where were we looking at? 163 against Adelaide, which was phenomenal. Fell off a couple of games against Melbourne, 129, and then some average scores. But, for a guy that cost 200k, you'd be pretty happy. He's the miss of the year, really, getting rid of him for an English. So this week, we basically triple traded for English because he was really expensive. We brought English in round 12. Round 12 was okay. 80. That's not great. This was off him coming back from a 160 as well. So a lot of people started him, got these scores, and I think English had delayed concussion or got injured at training. So he missed quite a few games. He's come back for a 160, which is great. And I'm like, Jeremy, quick. Big J, go and get him in because he's fairly cheap at the moment, and you don't want to be spending $650K. I think that was his projected score in the next couple of weeks. So his projected price. And if he's a required player, getting him in at $50K now, 50K cheaper now is great. So brought him in. Round 12, stinker against Geelong. Okay, Geelong ruckman, negate opposition ruckman. What can you do? Round 14, after the bye. Okay, it's not too bad. Misses 3 games. Comes back and scores a 97. Oh, Next week against St Kilda scores a 51. A 51. My nan could kick a 51. Melbourne 122 is not great. I mean, it is great. It's not bad. And then basically 4 stinker scores from a premium ruckman after that. So if I could do round 12 again, I would do round 12 again. But, what can you do? Round 13. This was the week that we brought in a lot of really cheap players. Really, really cheap primos. One thing I'll say for next year is save some trades and some cash for post-buy premiums. You will find bargains at that post-buy. I guarantee you. There was Merritt at 520, Doherty at 530. There was Heaney at 440K. There was Petrarca at 480K. Petrarca at 480K. Post-buy. Like, why are you not doing this? So McCartan was out. DeConning was out. I think this was their bye round. Mcrae out as well from the Dogs. And then picked up Judson Clark, Zach Merritt at 520. From then on, he went on a tear. A couple of bad scores, but, overall really good. And then Doherty the same as well. So this week, we ended up bringing in 3 players who had their bye or were going to have their bye versus 3 players that were on their bye. And I think we ended up fielding 18 or 19 in round 13. And that really, really helped us quite a lot. Round 14 was the exit of Gawn. I'm not sure quite what happened with him. I think maybe he just was having some injuries or looking really slow, that kind of thing. So, it wasn't great. We did have English on in the forward line, so we could just do the swap there and bring in another player, which really helped. That's why DBP is fantastic. So we went Gawn to Himmelberg, grabbed him up a bit, not bargain basement price, but decent price. Hayes offloaded him. That's the Port one as well. Brought in Teakle, who was a Port rookie. I think Hayes maybe had got injured or suspended, and then Teakle was likely to play in that position. And then Clark, which Clark are you? Greg Clark, yep. So got rid of Greg Clark, made us about 100K, and then brought Cornelio back in after his monster scores, because if I didn't have Cornelio, you don't want to be on the opposite side of that. Round 15 was rough. So offloaded Short, which I'm happy about. That was fine. He's one of those players similar to a Crisp, who I reckon I would have liked to offload as well. But, Short really, really had started struggling. Got shafted to the midfield, did okay, but was just dropping too many 70s and 80s. And from a premium play, you want a lot more. Brought in Bont, which worked out quite well. And then Butters as well. I think he had done his shoulder again and got injured again. And we brought in Goldstein. So Goldstein had a couple of really good games, which was great, but tapered off quite hard in the second half of the season. So would have liked to have a bench cover player who was capable, like a Heaney, for example. I keep talking about Heaney, but I wish I had him. Who would have helped to cover that position a bit more as well, and had that loophole that, hey, I could have chosen between the two. Butters was a bit of a miss. When did we get rid of him? We got rid of him round 15. So if we just look around round 15. So round 15 is when he got injured. Came back round 17, did okay, 96, pretty good. Round 18 against Melbourne wasn't great. I think Port got smashed. And then from round 19 onwards was dropping 100s. So him and Rosie went on a tear from about round 19 onwards, so 5 weeks. The owners that had him were laughing. They were so happy that they kept him. I would have been too. I hate watching a game and being like, man, I wish I had kept this player. Can he stop getting the ball all the time? And that's what happens, right? That's what happens. So yeah, it's not great. Got rid of Tom Stewart round 16. I think it was after his Castagna tackle that netted him 4 weeks out, which wasn't great. Brought in Bailey Dale, did quite well. That halfback flanker running role. Scored a couple of 130s, which was fantastic, especially with Caleb Daniel out. And yeah, got rid of Hewitt in round 20. I think that's when he got injured. So Tom Stewart came in to finish off his position. And that was my last trade for the year. So keeping that one injury trade really, really helped. Guys, thanks for joining me this year. It's meant a lot. The channel's grown. I've got to know you guys a lot more. Built us up on Twitter as well. So jump on Twitter and like me on Twitter or follow me on Twitter. Next year's going to be really fun. The things, like I said at the start of the video, learning those kind of simple things and adapting to the new changes in Supercoach. I think this year has been a lot more enjoyable than previous years when we've been a bit more restricted about what we can do. And I really, really hope that they keep the same things again. If you guys haven't already, jump on your AFLW fantasy. I might put out a couple of videos for those. It's round 2, but me and Charbine have been playing that. So it's been quite fun. Kind of something different, an introduction to learning the new players there. Supercoach will open up again probably in December. But before then, we'll put out a couple of videos talking about the draft. Probably who does your team want and who will be relevant in Supercoach next year. Anyway, remember guys, I'm Big J. Have a nice day. Bye.